Welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm excited to introduce the curator of Intuit's current exhibition, Ted Degener, At Home with Artists, Annalise Flynn. Annalise is an independent curator and arts administrator based in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Her current clients include the Arts Foundation of Kosciusko, the Keystone Foundation, and the Kohler Foundation, for which she manages Spaces Archives, the world's largest repository of archival documentation related to artist-built environments. Flynn's work highlights vernacular creative activity using material, memory, community, and place as research pillars. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Annalise, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you to everyone in Intuit. Thank you to Danny and Lindsay for helping facilitate this event. Thanks to Bob and Yaphet for being here. And thanks to all of y'all for tuning in. And then, of course, biggest thanks to Ted for his incredible work. I saw that he is here with us right now. So hi, Ted. Thanks for checking this out. So I just wanted to introduce the exhibition a little bit. I hope that most of y'all have had the chance to check it out, but for the folks that haven't, we're going to look at a couple of photos of the exhibition really quick. And here it is. Great. So this exhibition was born out of my work at Spaces Archives, as Allison mentioned. So Spaces has the mission to study, document, and preserve artist-built environments around and advocate for the preservation of artist-built environments around the world. So as part of that work for Spaces, I am looking at photographs and documentation of art environments all the time. And there are a ton of talented and extremely generous photographers who have shared their work with us so that we can keep track of these places and share them with others through Spaces, both the physical archive here in Sheboygan and the digital archive, www.spacesarchives.org. And so throughout doing that work, Ted Degener's images just continually really stood out to me in the way that they capture the artists inhabiting their work. And folks who have had the privilege to go to some of these places and meet these artists, like we'll hear more about from Bob and Yaphet, understand how important the presence of the artist is at the site to the experience of this artwork, and that it is, an impossible thing to replicate once the artists have passed away or left their sites. So Ted's images, to me, really provide an entry point into these places in a really special way, in addition to just being beautifully composed. So having the opportunity to show so much of Ted's work at Intuit has been really special. And I've been really grateful for that. And I know Ted has as well. And so another way that we wanted to try to make these places a little bit more tangible was to show some actual objects from the sites. So Intuit was able to share some work by Dr. Charles Smith that they have in their collection. And then we were able to bring in objects that Leonard Knight made at Salvation Mountain and that L.V. Hall made at her home in Kosciusko. And I have a pretty deep personal connection with both of these sites. They're very dear to me. I actually wrote my master's thesis about Salvation Mountain with Lisa Stone as my advisor, and she's here too. So hi, Lisa. And then I am working as part of the curatorial team with Yaphet on the forthcoming L.V. Hall Legacy Center, which we will hear more about as well. So that's just a little bit of background on this, and we'll be happy to answer some more questions about the exhibition later. And with that, we'll start with the questions for Yaphet and Bob. So just to start, can you both just introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your background, and then how you got involved with your respective sites? And we will start with Yaphet.
All right, thanks, Annalise. Yeah, so I was born in Starkville, Mississippi. My parents were in college, but my mother is from Kosciusko, which is, and my grandmother lived about 4 houses away from LV. And so that's how I discovered her, got to know her. At the age of 4 or 5, we had to pass her house to get to the corner store, and she's a striking presence in the neighborhood, and was good friends with my uncle. And so she just really left an indelible imprint on me. And as an adult, I wanted to revisit her, and I actually was a CPA and went to law school, but I had also been very involved in writing and was interested in film. And after I finished law school, I decided that I wanted to learn more about her and kind of get back to sort of the creative aspects of life. I started recording her in 2001 on video. I actually heard that she had passed away. Unfortunately, that wasn't true, but it kind of gave me extra impetus to make sure I recorded her. And I was able to record her for about 4 more years, and she lived 7 more years. And then I put the footage away. But kind of long story short, I ended up coming back to the footage and crafting this documentary about her called Love is a Sensation. It's a 1-hour documentary, not yet released. And in the process of all that, have been engaged in these preservation efforts, which I think we'll talk a little more about later.
Yeah, there's a photo of LV by Bruce West that was taken in the early 2000s, standing on her front porch in front of her art environment. And then we have a picture. Yep. Yaphet, do you want to talk about this picture at all?
Yeah, so it's 2003, and this one of the trips where I was recording her, and my uncle Milton, who was a very good friend of hers, who's now passed away, took that photo. And you know, it's you see, I have her. This is a picture of her porch in my background here, and you see 2 other pictures. And you know, it was a river. It was always changing, and but a riot of color that invited you from the street, and it was always just fantastic to be able to visit with her and spend time with her.
Awesome. Well, we'll move on to Bob then.
Yeah.
Well, hey, everybody. I guess the video will catch up. My story is not as great as Yaphet's is, but I come from a completely diverse and different background than Leonard, other than a few things like being a mechanic. Raised in Massachusetts, ended up in Bible college and seminary in Baltimore for a little while. Now currently live in Florida. I was never involved in any kind of art preservation. The only art that I can really speak of I've ever been personally involved with is music, which we all know is an art. Another thing that Leonard and I did share in common, playing the guitar. So there was a few things we have in common. But I got involved after marrying Sandy, my current wife, excuse me. We went on our first family trip together. We brought Mom, who was Leonard's youngest daughter, youngest sister, Norma. She wanted to visit her brother Leonard out at this place in California, Salvation Mountain. And I had having some, work around the Christian community. It sounded intriguing to me, and she showed me some pictures, and I thought, wow, that's a nice little thing to go look at. Let's go check it out. Well, that first visit in 2006, the average tourist, like most people visiting Salvation Mountain for the first time, didn't really know what to expect, didn't know what I was really going to see, and frankly, was astonished with both the fact that one man had worked so hard and so diligently. Here's some drone footage by one of our dear friends at the mountain. Those of you who haven't visited to see the site itself, when I approached it, it was just enormous to the eye, 50 foot plus high, 150, maybe 200 feet wide. It encompasses about 2.5 acres if you have perspective on land plats. And the main mountain is what we're zooming in on now. And he started that work in, of course, 1986. Of course, I'm talking about him more than me, but the fascination was there. Once, just like watching this drone, as soon as you start to visualize the mountain, it just takes you away from what you had in mind and brings you to a whole nother place. It's been quite an amazing experience for me. It was back then. And it still is today. Every time I watch video and look at pictures of the mountain, that just changes my perspective. So what brought me to where I am here today was after the family visit, I came back to life as it is, back to work, turning a wrench and, going on with life. And, everything slides when you go on a vacation or a trip to the back and you don't think much about it. In 2012, we got several phone calls from different family members. And we heard that Leonard had become ill or sick and was in the hospital and had been put into a nursing home. So that's kind of the information we got at the time. We've, of course, had it clarified as time progressed, but all the brothers and sisters all called around to each other to see if anybody, could help. There was this one lone fella at the time, that was Dan Westfald, who has been a longtime friend of Leonard and the mountain, previous president of our organization. He was the one trying to call to find out if there was anybody who could help. And the simple fact was that since he'd gone into the nursing home, there'd been several folks from the media and some documentarians and even a rumor somebody was going to come and kidnap him at one time, get him out of that old nursing home and bring him back to the mountain. So the nursing home pretty much locked down Leonard from the community at large. And he didn't have any family close by that could come visit or even respond on his behalf. So it passed through the family from the oldest brother all the way on down to the youngest sister, and that's my mother-in-law. So she, of course, listened to the story and handed the phone to me. And I said, "What, Mom?" And she said, "We need to help Leonard." And that was the day that seems to have changed my life and in my path. And we began, of course, to immediately interact with Dan and some of the other folks that were very close to Leonard at the time. We still are. And we got people access to the nursing home so they could get into him and see him. And that turned into a wonderful time for him. He did quite enjoy the nursing home he was in. He was happy with the care. And when he could start getting visitors there, folks would come and they would bring mail and read mail to him. And he enjoyed the last several years of his life in the nursing home as a result of those activities. So that's what brought me. And of course, that stimulated another trip out there because I just needed to meet all these people. And Mom wanted me to go out there and, say hello and probably goodbye for the last time for her. And I went out there with the intention to do some video and bring it home to Mom. And when I did get to do that. So we were blessed at that time. And from there, the current board or the existing board at the time invited me to participate in the board of directors. And it's been over 10 years, 12 years now that I've worked closely with the board. This picture here is I know it's probably not the happiest one that anyone wants to see in his last few years, but it was very special for me because it was the last time that I got to see him, spend time with him. And well, that was at the nursing home. So you can get me off there now. I don't want to look at that picture anymore. But that's how I've gotten involved. And it's been quite a fun trip. I don't know if my video's gone out or not, but it's been quite a fun trip. And I've enjoyed it this far. And I love the idea that I've been invited. I want to thank you guys for inviting me to this. I'm just overjoyed with the fact that people even want to talk to me. So thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions in this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob and Yaphet. So both of these projects with Salvation Mountain and with LV Hall and her environment and collection in Kosciusko have been very long-term. They've been going on for years. So Leonard passed away in 2014, and there was a board of directors that I believe was formed shortly before he passed away, or there around the same time. And then LV passed away in 2008. And then it was a few years later that a friends group came in and was able to salvage work from her home and then store it in the basement of the city hall in Kosciusko. So things have been happening for a while, but it does seem like both of these efforts have a lot of momentum behind them right at this moment. So what are the things that have had to come into place to allow these projects to move forward? And what kind of investment, in this work is it that y'all have been building upon? So I want to start with Yaphet again.
Yeah, so I'll go back just a little bit to bring us up to kind of the momentum. As you mentioned, Annalise, when she passed away, there was her sister, she left everything to her sister, QT, and then we were fortunate that there are a number of people in Kosciusko who were around LV, who cared about LV, who cared about her legacy. And there was a lot of community support, especially from the mayor at that time, and now the current mayor, Tim Kyle, and from Alan Massey, a good friend of hers and one of the friends of LV Hall, who, like you said, took care of her home and made sure, that it got into good hands. A neighbor ended up buying the home, but then safeguarded her personal belongings, her archive, and then all of the art that she owned at her death, kept it safe in City Hall. And things in the intervening years, there were different efforts to try to figure out how to share her legacy. And, in parallel, I was working on the documentary, and then COVID came and threw another monkey wrench into everything. And then I think, one of the real inflection points was reaching out to us and telling us about spaces. And then, so I think it was October 2020, and then being able to go on a journey or get connected with the Kohler Foundation in 2021 helped really start this current momentum that we were on. I had basically finished the documentary in 2018, and then we had kind of a personal health journey. So I put that on the back burner, while we dealt with my wife's cancer illness. Unfortunately, she's doing well now. And then, kind of that delay and COVID meant that, we were really ready when you reached out. And so being able to have the Kohler Foundation come in and help us with actually cleaning up the art, cataloging it, and then helping us purchase a site near her home that's on the corner to really jumpstart this sense of place and placemaking in Kosciusko, was increase the momentum even more. And, we talk about, you were talking at the beginning, how once these artists are gone, you can't really, you have to figure out what to do to infuse their spirit into these places. But one key thing is to maintain the location as much as possible. And LV's neighborhood was central. Her home was central. I say that she merged art making and the Southern art of visiting into this unique place to commune with her spirit, her creator, the people who came to visit with her. And so being able to acquire this corner lot was one piece of the puzzle. And then during that journey, her home became available for sale, and I was able to buy her home. We were able to unite those elements. So all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but a relatively short period of time, we now have these great elements that come together, with your participation, her home, the corner lot, to then be able to pursue opportunities to save and preserve her home. And so we were able to get her home included on the National Trust 11 Most Endangered list. So that created more momentum. We were able to apply for grants to save her home. And we were fortunate enough to get a partial grant from the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund of the National Trust. So that created publicity and additional momentum. And we, in the early days of this, were able to form the Arts Foundation of Kosciusko and its board, which has a great group of friends of LV, civic leaders that is supporting this whole effort. And that has helped us move forward even more. And so there's just a lot of factors coming together, and then things like this Intuit show, creates additional awareness of her. And it's just been a really, fortunate time for us. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm happy to talk about it more, but we'll leave room for Bob.
There's so much to say. So
much
many
to
great,
say.
exciting things. Yeah. So yeah, Bob, same question. I mean, Salvation Mountain is in a very unique position. Leonard didn't own the land, so that's a complication. It's in the desert. It's very hot. There's ongoing preservation issues. So if you could talk a little bit about what that's looked like throughout the years and what y'all are working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. To answer some of the earlier questions, Leonard went into the nursing home in 2012. He passed away in 2014, but he had started the organization prior to that. He had the foresight to say that was a good idea. And it was really great that had happened at that time. And he then, before he did pass away, he was able to complete his will, and he did will his property rights, his rights to his intellectual property to us. So that gave us the opportunity to segue to be able to manage that property. And yes, it is very unique. This is done on state land. There's probably a few other sites in the country that might be kind of like it, but I doubt it. So that's created a great challenge. Although the fact of the matter is that the state has never really interfered with what Leonard was doing out there. He, as a matter of fact, in some videos, I've seen him say that the state gave him permission, and he was happy with that. On the other hand, the county had some problems with his work, and without getting too deep into what they call the toxic nightmare, they wanted to demolition that property back in 1994, and they were unsuccessful. So God's hand definitely has been on Leonard and his work all this time. The challenges, the ongoing challenges, as you said, the environment is just incredibly challenging there. Although compared to here in Florida, there's very little rain out there, except for this past year. It's been quite rainy, but the rain isn't the biggest concern. The sun, the wind, and then the rain are the things that are the greatest challenges. Requires daily maintenance, daily cleaning, prep work for repairs, repair work, very ongoing preservation. Probably not like too many other sites where they get done and they stay the way they are for quite a long time, and periodically people will do a restoration and kind of clean them up. This is a completely different situation scenario. It just takes constant work. So those challenges, along with the fact that, again, being on state property limited us in a lot of ways to gaining funding. A lot of the larger funding sources that are out there for preservation were unavailable to us and still are unavailable to us because of the land ownership issue. So that has been a challenge over time. We're overcoming those challenges, again, with the cooperation from the state, not hindering us. And over time, the county has softened up quite a bit. And we're now being told that they're prepared to pass a resolution making Salvation Mountain a historic resource, which is something they can do on their books, which will open up doors for us as far as our preservation as we move forward. There are still some ongoing hindrances as to purchasing the property. We were on a campaign right now to purchase the property, and we've been raising funds, and we've made an initial offer, and that's been turned back to us. But we're in the process of making another offer and looking more closely at the amount of land that we wanted to get to preserve and to maintain a buffer around the mountain. So we are moving forward with that, and hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a resolution passed by the county, which will be our seal of approval for land ownership. That will then begin to open many more doors for us and allow us a lot more sense of security in the long run. We're very thankful to Annalise, particularly, has been a great friend to the mountain, and we just thank you so much for the work you've done You've gotten us, opened up doors for us in lots of areas, the Kohler Foundation, the Ruth Art Foundation. They've been kind enough to participate with us, even though we don't own the property, which has been wonderful. That's helped to open other doors and to give us more of a sense of security financially, and giving us some more room to be able to work on our preservation goals. So thanks to all of you guys. I really appreciate that. One of our greatest challenges is finally becoming not so much of a challenge over the next, hopefully, few years. I don't know if that answered all your question. The greatest investment we're working on, I can tell you, is 38 years of hard work. The investment Leonard put out there is the building block that has brought us to where we are now. It's often been asked the question, why, how does a place like this get preserved, and why after somebody passes away, for example? Leonard, when asked the first time, he wanted the mountain to just return back to the desert. He didn't want anybody else to come in and take it over. He didn't want a church to take it over. He didn't want, he had lots of things he didn't want to see happen. He would rather have it return to the sand or the mud of the desert, or the clay of the desert. But the on-site of the conversation of people that cared, that had passion, and that were willing to support him and to participate in the organization has, of course, segued that investment into reality. And I think we'll talk more about that later. Probably said enough for now. Did I cover it all?
You did. Yes. Thank you, Bob. Thanks so much. And thanks for turning us back toward the artists. So, my next question or next topic is, what I mentioned earlier about how important it was to meet Leonard and LV in their environments and see them interact with their space, and how, they both created places that brought the community to them in a really, really special way. And so, considering that Leonard and LV are no longer around to guide this work, I was wondering if both of you could talk a little bit about how you're keeping their spirits alive in the work that you're doing now and moving the preservation of these sites forward. And so first, we're gonna see a little clip of Leonard just so we can hear from him, and then Bob will talk. And then we will watch the trailer for Yaphet's film, and then we will hear from him.
I've been here 30 years, about 18 years on that big God is Love mountain, and about 17 years on a museum in there. And people took a liking to the mountain a lot, and I'm excited that people come in by the hundreds sometimes and just take pictures of it. And I got dedicated about 50 years ago, and God Almighty knows I wanted to work for Him. I get excited about putting God is love to the whole world. God loves everybody in the whole world, period. That's everybody. That's all people, everywhere, period. Love can get so big that it can cover everybody in the whole world if you let it. Just learn to love everybody, and we don't get into one denomination and figure that all the other ones are not going to make it. God is a universal God. A lot of people love me, and this mountain is known, and someone who told me on the internet there's over 100 different countries now that know about the mountain here in Ireland. So it's slowly getting out there. people are loving me mainly now, I think it's because of the message. It's an easy message. To love somebody is the most easy thing in the world to do. Just love somebody. Be nice to him. And all of a sudden, that guy's going to be nice back to you, and nice gets bigger. Woo! And it's going to spread the whole world. Love is going to do it.
So how do I follow that? The simple fact is that it's, I'm sorry, it's my turn, right? The simple fact is that it's very, very difficult since Leonard's been gone. You know, people, of course, were brokenhearted when he passed away. And I still hear from people today, and I'll hear more in the months to come, people that hadn't been there in years and they just didn't have the heart to go back because Leonard wasn't there anymore. So that seemingly was a great challenge in the project. But Leonard kept it very simple and gave it to us in a very simple message, how he wanted his mountain preserved. And that's the one thing that I think that we do as best we can to preserve the artist in our work, to preserve him, is to continue to do the work the way that he did it. You know, we don't change the process. We don't try to do anything different than he did. Thankfully, we have lots and lots, hundreds of hours of video of Leonard from very early 1986 when he first got there, and how he did the work there. So as best we can, we continue to do it just that way. And we try to emulate in very small ways. You know, we try not to be like Leonard. There'll never be another Leonard Knight, just like there'll never be another LV. You know, to try to maintain the environment without the artist is incredibly hard. But I think we're successful at it. And I'd like to say that by maintaining it, the videos, for example, was in probably the early to mid 2000s. One of the things that we've really put a lot of effort into was to maintain and to refurbish the main mountain to a very bright and colorful, the way he liked it. Some of those images, you see a lot of cracks in the surfaces and things. And back then he was so busy working on the museum and the different other things that he built around the mountain that he didn't often go back and keep up the mountain itself. So over time, the main part of the mountain began to deteriorate, and he always had to be kind of encouraged to go back and help start working on those cracks and things before they got worse. So I can proudly say that the people who've been on the ground since 2012, you know, we had some wonderful caretakers that came out and started our program of having caretakers out there, and they got right to work just in the mountain back in shape after Leonard had been away for, you know, even just about a year. You know, people had unfortunately come in and vandalized some of the art, which was just awful to look at. But they get that stuff cleaned up quickly, and knock on wood, we've been able to keep people out there all these years since he's passed away to not just provide security and keep people from vandalizing the project, but to bring it back to what I believe is a pristine condition right now. I mean, we've still got obviously more work to do, but I'd like to say, and I can say, because Leonard did come back one more time after the time I got to take a picture with him. He came back to visit one more time before he passed away, and his cataracts had been fixed and he could actually see his mountain. So he was very happy. He was very pleased that people had put their hearts into it, and he was happy that people were going to continue to do that. So we could say emphatically that Leonard's very pleased with our direction, and we're blessed by that fact. And that's one of the things that keeps us grounded in the work that we do. Leonard's idea was to show the world God's love through his work, through this work that we call art. He didn't consider himself an artist, but that was his goal. And we've impeccably followed that, and we let the mountain speak for itself. Those were the terms he used, and that's one of the ways that we emulate him, is by letting the mountain speak for itself. We try not to tell anything but his story, and let the mountain do the rest of the work. And that was God's goal, and that's what God told Leonard to do, and that was Leonard's goal and his mission to us. So I'd like to say that we're thrilled and that people are thrilled to see the mountain after all these years. We've had some come back, and even recently that didn't want to come back because Leonard wasn't there. And since they've come back, they've fallen back in love with the mountain and the work itself, and the legacy of the man who built it. So we're pleased, and we hope you all are too.
Thanks so much, Bob. I love that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Leonard got to come back and visit one more time, and that he had his cataracts fixed and was able to see the mountain so clearly. I think that's so beautiful. And how wonderful that there were people around him that were able to facilitate that. I love to know that. Well, thank you. So next we will watch the trailer for Love is a Sensation, and then we'll hear from Yaphet.
Sometimes you can be down and out. Somebody will come along and you forget about what hurt you. The unusual artist.
LV, who is that?
This is the art. So glad to see you. That wasn't my wig. Let me show you how I look with it on. I know I ain't pretty, but I can look presentable sometimes. San Diego, California. Denver, Colorado. Louisville, Kentucky. New Orleans, Chicago, Detroit. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Switzerland. That's the most German. As his voice was going away, he was trying to tell us to take care of his bicycle. That's what he was trying to say. This old building keep on leaning. I got to move to a better home. It's a whole University of the Peoples of Patala County. Got on my nerve. Love is a sensation, started by a conversation, spread by the population, and hushed like an operation.
Who does love you?
But Milton loved me.
Yeah.
Oh, that man's something else, I'm telling you. So you go find him for me?
Dear Mr. King, I love Miss LV. I think you would enjoy visiting with her.
And I might tell him, do not try to understand me, Mr. B.B. King, just love me.
Right. Yeah. So as far as keeping her spirit alive, I mean, it's a pretty formidable spirit. And, like Bob was saying, you can't imitate or duplicate LV at all. But, there were aspects of her spirit that we're really trying to lock in on and preserve those elements. And, foremost among one of the principal ones is her home, to actually save her home. That's a hallowed space. And it was really what facilitated her ability to pursue her creative journey. Once she got that home, she was in her early 30s. She started working with her imagination, and that's how she described it. And you can still, even though her environment is no longer set up there, you can still see the indicia of her creativity, the faded spots on the wall where she had art mounted, places where, that she painted in the home. And the fact that that home in a, African-American neighborhood and using discarded items and glue and paint from Walmart, she created this place that attracted people from around the world and became a beacon for her community. So really preserving that is preserving her spirit. And then another feature is being able to share her legacy in that neighborhood, as opposed to having art installed elsewhere. The fact that people came to that neighborhood and that she created this legacy there in that neighborhood is key to her legacy and her spirit. And we're grateful we're able to do that. And even the site that we're using is a place where tour buses used to park to come visit her anyway. The family that owned the land, the kind of matriarch of that family really knew LV. And so it's kind of an organic and natural way to share her legacy. And it also happens to be on the main thoroughfare leading from the Natchez Trace to the town square. And it's sort of at the intersection of LV's creativity in the world, literally. So it is a beautiful place for that. And then also the film is, one way of really making sure her spirit lives on. In some ways, it's an unusual film because it just allows LV to share her story, her desires. There's no outside experts or anything. And in a way, it is a embodiment of the way that you would, if you came to visit her, that you would experience her, and you get to see her through that work. And then we're just trying to extract as many aspects of her creative practice as we can and explore those in the Legacy Center. For instance, making children were really important to LV. She was very interested in how children responded to her work. So making sure we have programming along those lines and engage with children. We'll have space to actually share her art in an environment that's very similar to her home. That'll be very important. Having it be, I talked about the art of visiting as part of sort of LV's creative practice, and encouraging having this place where community members can visit with one another, where they can commune with one another. That embodies her spirit. And then perhaps most of all is taking the time and giving ourselves the space to actually listen to her neighbors, to listen to her family, to listen to people who knew her, to really figure out the best ways to pay tribute to her. And Bob, you mentioned the Ruth Foundation for the Arts earlier. That's one of our supporters as well, and we really appreciate their support that doesn't have the kind of strings attached that a lot of grants have, and that gives us the space to try to go through our own process and figure out the best ways to honor her legacy, and including just getting the word out about her. There's we're working on with the Mississippi Museum of Art and Ryan Dennis and Annalise on a major exhibit of LV's work that'll be in November of 2024. And that's another vehicle for us to really try to explore and share her spirit with the world. And LV, as far as I can tell, didn't leave as many kind of prescriptions about her legacy, but we know that she was always tickled and honored, when people traveled to see her art and came to appreciate it. And I know she would be overjoyed by, all of this fuss over her. Her sister QT has said as much. Her cousin, Miss Bernice, who lives down the street, has said as much. And so we'll just continue to do all we can to keep her spirit alive.
Thank you, Yaphet. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thanks to both of y'all. So just to turn it back to the work y'all are doing a little bit, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what the long-term vision for these sites are. Like, what is the long-term hope for the Legacy Center and the programming that it'll offer to the community? And what is the long-term hope at Salvation Mountain, you know, after you get over this hurdle of purchasing the land? Like, what are the next steps? And let's start with Bob.
Well, I'll do that, and I'll also answer an anonymous attendee's question about goal to repair where broken, or just keep it as is. What's the goal to repair? Leonard pretty much wanted us to preserve it the way it was. I believe that he anticipated it would last forever by itself, but unfortunately, we all know that the elements weren't going to allow that, so it would require some maintenance. We decided as a board very early in the game that what our intention was to attempt to cap off the areas that he left exposed. For example, he was working in the museum and he had not completely finished doming the entire museum over. He was his intention was to build a simulation of the balloon partially inflated, kind of laying on the side of the ledge there. That's what the overall goal was for that. The debate, of course, was should we finish it or not? And we all agreed, we felt like it was in the best, that Leonard had directed us in the direction to preserve it the way it was. So we didn't decide to finish his work. We decided to cap it off and preserve it as best we could where it is, where he left it at. One of the questions that often comes up is what do you use as a guide for the colors and the color schemes and the different areas? That's been a very difficult challenge for us, because when he started in 1986, the first mountain, of course, fell, and then the second mountain was kind of constantly evolving in colors. He didn't have a lot of resources back then, so he had to use whatever he was given. And the donations of paint were what he based the color schemes on. So throughout the years, even into 2000, he continued to use whatever colors he got, and his vision, because it had gone away, wasn't good enough to be able to mix those colors quite the same way they were. So, you know, his visual, his concept of what it looked like visually in the colors was never really set in stone at any one given time. So we do the best that we can to look at a lot of the great imagery that a lot of great photographers have taken over the years, and try to find a happy medium as to where we sit. Some people look and say, that's not the way it was. Sometimes our board members say that. I don't remember it being like that. And somebody will pull up a picture and say, yeah, here it was, 2003. He's made so many different changes over time, not in his, you know, particular vision, but in the colors and, you know, that he used. That it made it hard for us, but I think we've got a pretty good grasp on it. And yes, we absolutely repair things that are broken, cracks, you know, whatever does it. I was telling the ladies before the meeting started, we were talking a little bit about preservation, and it's almost every year, sometimes twice a year, there's an area of the mountain that actually, there's areas of the mountain that will actually collapse. We call it a collapse. What happens is the water gets underneath the surface of the paint and walks its way down the clay. And as it washes away, you know, those layers of clay underneath the paint, it leaves that hollowed paint out. It also causes that clay to kind of go down and belly in spots. And we see those bellies, and we always know eventually there's going to be a collapse there. And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. But about every year, there's been one major collapse somewhere on that mountain. And I'm not even talking about the museum. If you were to go out and visit today, you wouldn't notice. Right now, there's one area that hasn't been restored yet, and that's the Lord's Prayer. It is definitely going to be restored, but it is one of the most challenging parts because it's a complete vertical on the mountain, and it's going to take some skill to get that back in the way that it was. And then all the entire prayer was all done with caulk. He did all of his small print in caulk because it was too tedious to do in clay, and caulk was pretty cheap back then. So it will be brought back to shape, and the museum has always been a question on people's minds. It's been closed for a little while. It will reopen. It will open in just limited area for the first step while the preservation of the restoration continues. But we just can't let anybody in there until we're completely comfortable with the idea that something, one of those bales of hay up there isn't going to fall. So we regret that more than anyone does, that the museum isn't open, but we are working on that museum. Ron Malinowski is our current caretaker out there. He's on our board of directors, and he's done an incredible job. He's been out there 6 years, and he's done an incredible job in bringing the artwork, to the brilliance that it is today. And he has been working in that museum. So probably got off task a little bit. Redirect me, Annalise. Did I answer your question? I know I answered that fellow's question, or that person's question.
Yeah, well, now that you mention it, I mean, definite shout out to Ron. Ron's the man. The mountain looks awesome. I was there in March. I was blown away by how good it looked. And Ron definitely is a keeper of Leonard's spirit, and he is Leonard first all the way. And I love it. Ron's the best. So the question was, what is the long-term vision for the site?
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. So our long-term vision, of course, is I've already described in our preservation is just to continue to do the work that we're doing to preserve the work. It'll have to be repeatedly done over the years. Without changing the way that we do it, it's going to continue to do what it does. So we'll have to continue that work. One of our particularly long-term goals that I'm excited about is that we've talked quite extensively now about eventually building a museum out there. And members of the Kohler Foundation had come out and visited with us, and they've discussed it. And we're hoping that they do work with us down the road when we do own the property. They've talked about helping us to build a museum out there. We've collected up, since Leonard left, we began collecting up any artifacts or any personal property of his that was out in a vulnerable area, and we've been storing it. It's been all cleaned, much like Yaphet said. Everything's been cleaned, packaged, and in containers and storage, so that we can eventually have a museum and bring all this stuff back out on display. One of the reasons we're involved here is because we do really enjoy people seeing Leonard's stuff, and we don't have a way out there at the mountain. He built this museum. He was building this museum as a place that he could put his things into so people could see. But of course, it never got to fruition, and it couldn't possibly be really safe out there for all of his artifacts to be kept in that environment. So a real museum is on our list of things down the road. Other than that, we've got to do a little bit more work with our parking and some things in that nature, logistical things that we're a little bit restricted on until we own the property.
Awesome. Yaphet, long-term vision?
Okay, yes. So, the overarching vision is, or the impetus is to preserve and activate her legacy. So the preservation piece is, we want to preserve her home. We have a little bit of money, we need about $150,000 more to actually make sure her home is weather tight and preserve what's there, rehabilitate some aspects of it. And then, part of that is also her work has been preserved, but then kind of moving over to the activate aspect is at the corner site, we have 4 great structures, and one is an exhibition space. So we want to exhibit LV's work, share her life story, also have exhibitions, rotating exhibitions that delve into other aspects of her art or members of the community. There's a lot of great stories from that neighborhood and from Kosciusko that we can share. And then, but also activate her legacy by serving her community, her neighborhood, particularly women and girls and children, and with programming, arts programming, concerts, whatever, things like that, as well as inviting artists in residence or scholars to come activate LV's archive or learn about her or do scholarly work there in Kosciusko. And then we, part of that is also sharing her works with other institutions like Intuit and places like that. But for the corner lot, we also need to raise money. We're using existing structures and renovating those. And, we need about $500,000 there in order to renovate those structures and make that happen. And so we are, we're on a journey to do that. But long term, this will be a place that both serves and helps energize that immediate community and LV's community, and attracts visitors from around the world as well, just like they were attracted to LV's home, and hopefully bring additional energy to Kosciusko and Attala County. I know we're close to time, so.
Awesome. Yeah, I have been alerted that we can go a little bit over. So
Oh, great. Okay.
we're good.
Great.
I do think we've answered pretty much everything in the Q&A though. So I don't know if anybody has any other pressing questions. Please feel free to send those in. Just to close us out, I had asked if either of y'all had questions for each other. So I know Yaphet, you had a question for Bob. I don't know if Bob, if you have a question for Yaphet, but this would be a good time for that.
Yes. Am I asking mine? So my question was about surprises, Bob. Was there any, you touched on it a little bit already, but were there any particular surprises in this journey for you, whether it's surprising challenges, surprising helpers, enthusiasts, anything along those lines?
The surprising challenges. I'm a little bit surprised right now with the way that the state, is how the state has recently considered us purchasing the land. I think we found a way to get past that, but I was a little bit surprised about that challenging thing. Other than that, I've been thrilled and surprised by, people who have floated through up to the surface since I've been involved. So many great people. We've talked about directors and photographers. Aaron Huey, National Geographic's photographer, was very, very dear friend to Leonard and spent a lot of time out there. Just so many people that have come to the surface that we didn't know. One of the things I found when I first got involved, which I thought was a very interesting concept, a very interesting thing, was that because Leonard was out there all the time, 24/7, he lived out there, people would come and go, and visitors would come, and some would come and spend just a few hours. Some would come and spend weekends. Some would come and spend weeks at a time. So people didn't always get to meet or know who each other were. And over time, I've just been really surprised to see how many people go out there and visit that no one else ever knew that they were there. I one time found a Bible that was hidden in the wagoneer. It was either a gift or it was just something that Leonard kept there. And it had the names of 5 very famous evangelists, the signatures of 5 very famous evangelists in it. I won't tell you who they were because I probably can't remember right now. And I was very intrigued and surprised to see that these people had either got together and signed this Bible, or that they had actually visited the site to see what the heck this old man was doing out there. So there are a few things that did surprise me. Yes. How about you?
Yeah, surprises.
Same question.
Okay. Yeah, there have been a lot. I mean, but I wanted to give LV a chance to share her world, just mainly about the documentary, but then getting into the sort of preservation aspect, I mean, I had no idea about somebody like Annalise or the Kohler Foundation or Ruth Foundation for the Arts, which is relatively new, but Ruth the Young Kohler had been doing her work for, you know, a while. But the fact that there are these organizations dedicated to these, and people dedicated to these visionary artists, and trying to make sure these artists' legacies are preserved and shared was a real, you know, revelatory surprise for me. And, you know, particularly for LV, there aren't a lot of African-American artists who created environments where those environments survive, or even where their artwork survives, and where their stories can be told sort of from their perspective, from, you know, from the inside out, as opposed to being about trauma or exclusively about race. And so the fact that we have partners and supporters, you know, who are fully behind this approach and who are dedicated, have been doing this work, you know, for years and years, is that was a huge surprise to me. And then I guess another one is the extent to which and the varieties of ways in which LV deeply impacted people was a little bit of a surprise. Like, I knew people loved her and were dedicated to her. You can see the guest books, you know, of all those people that visited. But people share really kind of, you know, meaningful stories about their impact on her. And, you know, that's been really rewarding, and hopefully we'll get to hear more of that and people will get to share more of that.
Yeah, that's the same kind of thing that I was talking about with Leonard, exactly, that just to see the people, to find out later you didn't know that these people had even been acquainted with Leonard or LV, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't want to pass by the Ruth Art. I know you mentioned it, but I did want to give them some kudos. That was a very surprising thing too, that I probably should say a little bit more about. You know, Ruth Arts, when we were introduced to them, we didn't really know, you know, what they were all about. Began to look, and I love the idea that they were all really all about artists, how they live, how they work, and how they're remembered. Those are the three things that really stuck out in my mind when I read through their information. And for them to be as generous as they were, like you say, that without putting a lot of stipulations on funding, you know, their grant process was very streamlined. And it's been extremely invaluable to us, the funding that they provided to us last year. You know, if you're out there listening and you're part of a project like these, and there's projects like these all over the world, they're all just different in one way or another. LV and Leonard were like two peas in a pod, really, the way that I view them. They both used, you know, recycled, unusable things. I'm just going to say it blunt. They both used trash and junk that everybody else, things that other people thought were junk, and they used them in their art. You know, there's a whole community of people doing that throughout the world now, using, you know, recycling things into art. So for an organization like that, and Ruth Kohler to you know, see the need for something like this, that's been a wonderful thing. It was not something that I thought was as existent as it is in the art community. So having not had a lot of experience in the art community myself up until this work, I had no knowledge. So it's been quite a blessing for them and some of these other organizations to be involved.
Yeah. I think the love theme connects them too as well.
Yeah.
It's a deep one.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, thank you both so much for this. This has been so wonderful. We have one final question that I can touch on quickly, which is somebody asked, are there other efforts going on like this around the country and the world? And the answer is yes, 100%. There are tons of folks doing work like this. You know, to name a couple, there's The Last Resort in Lagunitas, California, that's currently working on saving their site. There are folks working with Pearl Fryer and his topiary garden in Bishopville, South Carolina. There are folks working with Joe Mentor in the African Village in America in Birmingham. There's a lot of need for these kinds of sites and a lot of opportunities to get involved. If there's someone close to you, I'm sure that they would welcome you jumping in. And then also on top of that, you know, there's a group of art environment networks who are forming a network and coming together to share resources. I'm super excited to be involved. Bob is coming to our convening in November. I hope Yaphet is coming too. So we're going to be getting together and trying to, you know, talk about some of these challenges, but also celebrate where all this work is going well. And so much of it is going well with Salvation Mountain and with the LV Whole Legacy Center, thanks to you two. So thank you so much to the both of you. Thanks Intuit for hosting this, and thanks to everyone for watching.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah,
thanks everybody. Sure appreciate it.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Hey, what's your website, Yaphet?
Oh, you can go to lvhall.org for LV stuff, and then loveisasensation.com.
Cool. SalvationMountain.org is our organization's website, and then SalvationMountain.us, built by an old friend of Leonard's, Bob Sims, who's our historian on our board. Those are two websites that we'd love to have you check out if you want to get more information, see more images, and learn more about our art.
Or donate some money.
Or donate some money, sure.
Click of a button. Easy, easy peasy.